I always saw myself as a devoted wife and mother. My marriage wasn't perfect, but it was stable and predictable. Over the years, my husband and I fell into a routine of polite indifference. We lived together, raised our kids together, but somewhere along the way, the spark that once connected us faded into an unspoken distance. I didn't mind. I told myself it was normal, just part of growing older together. Our son, Ethan, had recently turned 21, and his group of friends practically lived at our house. Loud laughter and the clinking of beer bottles echoed through our living room most weekends. But I didn't mind. It was comforting to see Ethan happy and surrounded by people who cared about him. Among them was a young man named Ryan, who stood out for reasons I couldn't quite pinpoint. Ryan was tall, with sandy blonde hair and an easygoing charm that seemed to light up the room. He was always polite and respectful, but there was a quiet confidence about him that made me notice him in a way I probably shouldn't have. At 24, he was barely older than Ethan, but there was something magnetic about him. It all started one lazy Saturday afternoon. Ethan and his friends were out by the pool, laughing and tossing a football around. I was in the kitchen preparing snacks when Ryan walked in, dripping wet and shirtless. "Mrs. Carter," he said, flashing me that disarming smile. "Do you need any help?" I waved him off, trying to keep my eyes on the platter of sandwiches I was arranging. "No, thank you, Ryan. You should go back and enjoy yourself." But he didn't leave. Instead, he leaned against the counter, watching me with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. "You always take such good care of everyone," he said softly. "You deserve to relax, too." His words caught me off guard, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it. His voice was low and sincere, as if he saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself for years. I brushed it off, laughing nervously. "That's what moms do," I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. But the way he looked at me made it impossible to ignore the unspoken tension hanging in the air. Over the next few weeks, I found myself noticing Ryan more and more. The way his laughter filled the room, the way he always found an excuse to linger in the kitchen when I was there. I told myself it was harmless, just a silly crush that I would never act on. But deep down, I knew there was more to it than that. Then, one evening, everything changed. Ethan had gone out with the rest of his friends, but Ryan stayed behind, claiming he wasn't feeling well. I offered to make him some tea and sat with him in the living room. The house was unusually quiet, without the usual chaos of young voices. As we talked, I realized how easy it was to open up to him. He listened in a way my husband hadn't in years, his eyes never leaving mine. I shared my frustrations, my fears, the loneliness I hadn't even admitted to myself. When I finished, he reached out and took my hand. "You're incredible, Mrs. Carter," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You deserve to feel alive." Before I could respond, he leaned in and kissed me softly at first, then with a hunger that left me breathless. Every rational thought screamed at me to stop, to pull away, but I couldn't. For the first time in years, I felt wanted, desired, alive. We pulled apart just as the front door opened, and Ethan's voice called out. Panic surged through me as Ryan quickly stepped back, his expression unreadable. I spent the rest of the evening in a haze, barely able to meet my son's eyes. Guilt and exhilaration warred within me. In the days that followed, Ryan and I never spoke of what happened, but the memory of that kiss lingered, a dangerous secret we both carried. I knew it was wrong, knowing I was risking everything, but part of me couldn't help but wonder, what if? That night after Ryan kissed me, I barely slept. I lay in bed beside my husband, Steve, his snoring rhythmic and oblivious to the storm raging inside me. My mind replayed the kiss over and over, the heat of Ryan's lips, the way his hand lingered on mine, the intensity of his gaze. It had been years since I'd felt that kind of passion. I wasn't sure if I was more terrified of what had happened or how much I craved it again. The next day, I tried to avoid Ryan entirely. Ethan had a group project, so I assumed Ryan wouldn't be coming over. But as if the universe was testing my resolve, the doorbell rang in the late afternoon. My stomach dropped when I opened the door to find him standing there, holding a small box of tools. "You need help fixing the cabinet in the laundry room," he said casually, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of something deeper. "I don't think that's necessary," I replied, my voice shaky. I just thought I could lend a hand, he insisted. Reluctantly, I stepped aside, leading him to the back of the house. The air between us was thick with unspoken tension. Ryan worked quietly, his usual charm replaced with an unusual seriousness. I hovered near the doorway, unsure if I should leave or stay, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. When he finished, he turned to me, his face unreadable. Mrs. Carter, we can't, he interrupted, my voice shaky. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. He stepped closer, and I instinctively backed up until my back hit the wall. He was inches away now, his scent clean and masculine overwhelming my senses. Was it really a mistake? He asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't stop thinking about you, he continued, about how it felt to kiss you. I wanted to deny it, to push him away, but the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about him either. My resolve crumbled as he reached out, his hand brushing my cheek. You deserve more than this life, he murmured. You deserve to feel alive, to feel wanted. Just like that, the walls I'd built around myself came crashing down. I closed the distance between us, my lips finding his in a desperate, hungry kiss. This time, there was no hesitation, no guilt, just pure, unrestrained passion. His hands roamed my body, igniting a fire I hadn't felt in years. I felt like a woman again, not just a wife or a mother, but a woman desirable, needed. We ended up in the laundry room, the mundane surroundings of my domestic life a sharp contrast to the reckless abandon of what we were doing. His touch, his kisses, they consumed me, making me forget about everything else. My marriage, my family, the consequences. When it was over, we sat in silence, the weight of what we'd done settling over us like a heavy blanket. I avoided his gaze, shame creeping in to replace the euphoria I'd felt moments ago. This can't happen again, I whispered, more to myself than to him. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. As time went on, the guilt and excitement of that moment weighed heavily on me. My relationship with my husband, Steve, became strained as the unspoken tension between us grew. I tried to push thoughts of Ryan out of my mind, but they kept resurfacing, making it harder to maintain the facade of a stable marriage. One evening, I decided to confront my feelings head-on. I realized that staying silent was only prolonging the pain and confusion. I needed to take control of my own life and make decisions that were best for me and my mental well-being. I began seeking therapy to help navigate the complex emotions and guilt I felt. Slowly, I started to understand that my worth wasn't defined by my marriage or my ability to keep everything together. I deserved happiness and fulfillment, even if it meant making difficult choices. Eventually, I gathered the courage to talk to Steve about everything. It was one of the hardest conversations of my life, but it was necessary. We decided to seek couples therapy together, hoping to rebuild the connection that had been lost over the years. Through therapy, Steve and I began to communicate more openly, addressing the underlying issues that had driven us apart. We worked on rekindling the spark that once brought us together, rediscovering the love and respect we still had for each other. Meanwhile, Ryan and I mutually decided to cut ties, recognizing that our brief moment of passion had complicated our lives in ways we hadn't anticipated. We agreed that moving forward separately was the healthiest choice for both of us. Today, my marriage is stronger than ever. Steve and I continue to work on our relationship, ensuring that we never let the distance between us grow again. Therapy has been instrumental in helping us reconnect and rebuild the trust and intimacy we once shared. I no longer feel the need to seek validation outside of my marriage, and I am grateful for the journey that led me to this point of self-discovery and empowerment. Looking back, I realized that the challenges I faced were opportunities for growth. They taught me the importance of communication, self-respect, and the value of seeking help when needed. I learned that true happiness comes from within, and that it's never too late to make positive changes in your life. As I continue to move forward, I encourage anyone facing similar struggles to reach out for support. Whether it's through therapy, talking to loved ones, or finding strength within yourself, know that you have the power to reclaim your life and create the happiness you deserve. Thank you all for watching and listening to my story. If you found it relatable or helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might benefit from hearing about my experience. Remember, setting boundaries and prioritizing your well-being is crucial in overcoming personal challenges. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next video.